Morant with a running start. Elevates. Dunks. Oh, my goodness. Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance. Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. Ja Morant. Insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. My name is Keith Parrish. The Grizzlies beat the Houston Rockets for the first time this season. The game went down to the wire, and the Grizzlies finally got a win against Houston. Also, Jaren Jackson Jr. was named an NBA All-Star. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about the big victory over the Rockets. I'm going to talk about Jaren making the All-Star game. Also, several Memphis Hustle players named to the G League Next Up game. Also, Zach Edey and Jalen Wells were named Rising Stars. Going to get to all of that and more on today's episode. Before I do, just a reminder, if you're anywhere near Nashville, Tennessee, we are back at it on Monday night. The Grizzlies are hosting the Spurs. I am hosting a Grizzlies watch party at Noble's Beer Hall. Come on down. Monday night, 7 p.m. game. Hopefully Ja Morant will be back, but we'll get a Jaren Jackson Jr. versus Victor Wembanyama, a big game for the Grizzlies. Come hang out with other Grizzlies fans. Win some Grizzlies prizes that I'm giving away. Be over at Noble's Beer Hall in East Nashville this Monday, February 3rd at 7 p.m. All right, let's start actually with the announcements about All-Star Weekend. Just Jaren Jackson Jr. was, in fact, named a reserve. I was not worried about this. Maybe I was ignorant or too confident. I didn't think there was any question that Jaren Jackson Jr. was going to be named a reserve. Essentially, everyone who covers the NBA, every writer that I saw who named their All-Stars, they included Jaren Jackson Jr. I haven't seen Jaren Jackson Jr. left off anywhere, so I didn't think the coaches were about to leave him off. So Jaren makes his second All-Star game. He joins Marc Gasol, Ja Morant, and Zach Randolph as the only players in Grizzlies franchise history to make multiple All-Star games. Absolutely a deserving honor for Jaren. I think he definitely is in contention for an all-NBA spot this season. We've talked about him a lot. Of course, it's a Grizzlies show that you're listening to or watching right now, but Jaren's averaging a career-high 23 points. He won that Western Conference Defensive Player of the Month in December. He just won Western Conference Player of the Week last week. He's the leading scorer for the number one offense in the NBA, and also, by the way, is known for his defensive prowess. He's an easy choice for an All-Star. So congratulations to Jaren Jackson Jr. And then Jalen Wells and Zach Edey, no surprise, named to the Rising Stars game as rookies. They are two of the leading rookies for Rookie of the Year. I mean, technically, Khalil Ware is the betting favorite right now. I think Steph Castle might have a leg up. Jalen Wells is at a disadvantage for this Rookie of the Year award because maybe his biggest contribution doesn't show up in the box score. I mean, he showed up in the box score against the Rockets. Jalen Wells had an awesome game against Houston, but Jalen Wells has started all season for the Grizzlies, averaging over 11 points per game, one of the top rookie scorers, so he's in contention for Rookie of the Year. Zach Edey, of course, a big-name guy from college. That helps him, I think, in the Rookie of the Year race. He just needs to make sure he can stay on the court. He did not stay on the court against the Rockets. A coaching decision had him out of the game. I support that coaching decision. But anyways, Zach Edey and Jalen Wells are headed to the Bay Area for the Rising Stars game. It's possible. Again, there's a certain level of ignorance for me, refusing to understand the new NBA All-Star format. I think one of the Rising Stars teams has a chance to then face the actual All-Stars on Sunday night because there's going to be some kind of 4-team tournament. 3 of the teams I know are NBA All-Stars. So like maybe Jalen and Zach will be playing alongside or against Jaren on Sunday. I don't know. I'm choosing to let it be a mystery to me when I tune in and figure out what's going on. But anyways, a big honor for those guys. Also, the G League Next Up game is going to feature some Memphis Hustle players. Congrats to those guys getting this honor and being showcased. Yuki Kawamura is headed to the Next Up game. Also, Armando Baycott, Maljinha Pereira, one of my favorites, and then DJ Stewart. They're all going to be out there. So, after Jaren was named an All-Star on Thursday night, then the follow-up to this was a big showdown with the Houston Rockets. Very famously, the Houston Rockets had beaten the Grizzlies 3 times already this year. The Rockets are ahead of the Grizzlies in the standings. Just this week, the Rockets beat the Cavaliers twice and the Celtics. They are on an unbelievable run. This was a big challenge for the Grizzlies because they just got destroyed by the Knicks. A humiliating, demoralizing defeat to the Knicks. You allowed 143 points. So this game against the Rockets was not everything, but by winning it, you certainly make us Grizzlies fans feel a lot better about what's going on. So this big showdown actually featured teams that were missing some of their best players. Of course, Ja Morant missed this big national TV game. He aggravated a shoulder injury. I guess, though, the word aggravation, we're trying to figure this out if that's the right terminology because he missed a ton of games with the shoulder injury. Last year, different shoulder took him out for most of the season. But there's some talk of like, is this an aggravation of a previous injury? Is this a new injury? Has he been struggling to manage this shoulder injury all along? And I think the answers that we've gotten from Taylor Jenkins are no, he hasn't been struggling with this shoulder injury all along. But in practice, he did bump the shoulder that had been hurt. That caused it to be excessively sore, and he could not go in the game. So no Ja Morant for this big showdown. Meanwhile, for Houston, they're missing Alperen Şengün, who was named an All-Star. This was Şengün's first missed game of the season. So both teams a little bit shorthanded. And the first half played out sort of similar to how the previous 3 matchups had gone. The Grizzlies trailed for most of the first half. They were down by 10 points at halftime. At halftime, the Grizzlies had only made 2 3-pointers. Meanwhile, the Rockets were 7 for 15 from the 3-point line. The Rockets are not a exceptionally good 3-point shooting team, but in the first 3 matchups, they made 43% of their 3-pointers. Meanwhile, in this one, they made 7 out of 15 in the first half, and it felt like the same old story. Also, some other very notable storylines for this game as Grizzlies fans. Because of Şengün being out, Steven Adams started against the Grizzlies. This was Steven Adams' first start of the season. We got the titanic clash of Steven Adams against Zach Edey starting this game. Steven Adams had a great game. Steven Adams contributed to the Rockets dominating the offensive glass throughout the game. But the Grizzlies found themselves down by 10 at halftime to a team they'd already lost to 3 times. At this point, I'll be honest, I was not feeling very good. Now, I was trying to encourage myself by just knowing that the way things tend to go in the NBA, it's like anytime you're feeling super down, the teams bounce back. And that's actually what happened. And I don't know if it was predictive by any means, but it's hard for a team to beat another team 4 times usually, unless you're just so much better. I mean, maybe the Rockets, I would say, I don't think it's controversial. Maybe it is for the grits and grinds, passionate fan base. I think the Rockets are a better team than the Grizzlies. But tonight, without Ja Morant, the Grizzlies were able to overcome that second half deficit. To start the second half, Luke Kennard made 2 3-pointers. Immediately in the first 70 seconds of the third quarter, the Grizzlies had doubled their number of made threes per the game. They start the second half on an 8-0 run. They eventually take the lead for the first time with about 4.5 minutes left in the third quarter. Then, what had been, I would say, sort of a defensive struggle, even though the Rockets shot a fantastic field goal percentage in the first half, then we had a shootout, it felt like, in the third quarter. Both teams making a lot of three-pointers. Now, in the third quarter, one part of that was Jaren picked up his fourth foul about 5 minutes into the third, and he was in foul trouble once again. Then we get to the fourth quarter, which, by the way, before we get to the fourth quarter, extremely crucial play for this game. Jake LaRavia checks in with 20 seconds left in the third quarter and banks in a buzzer beater to cut the Rockets' lead to 4 going into the fourth quarter. By the way, the Grizzlies had only won twice this year when trailing after 3 quarters, both of those victories, of course, against the Minnesota Timberwolves. But the Grizzlies go into the fourth quarter losing. Jaren Jackson Jr. is back out on the court. He picks up his 5th foul 1 minute and 17 seconds into the fourth quarter. Now, Jaren leaves. At this point, I'm feeling kind of down for a couple of reasons. Jaren was just named an all-star. In my mind, in national TV games, Jaren seems to get in foul trouble quite frequently. When Jaren checked out with 10 and a half minutes left in the fourth quarter, he had 12 points on 12 field goal attempts. He had 3 rebounds and no blocks. And I'm here watching my guy, one of my favorite players, and I'm just disappointed. I'm like, this national TV audience is watching Jaren Jackson Jr. There are people out there like thinking Domantas Sabonis got snubbed and Kyrie Irving got snubbed for the All-Star game, which they probably did. I mean, I don't think they were coming for Jaren's spot. Again, I think Jaren's spot was secure. But you still have people thinking that their guy should have gotten in the All-Star game. Meanwhile, you're watching Jaren Jackson Jr., and maybe their impression of Jaren is the guy can't rebound and he can't stay out of foul trouble. And here we are on national TV. We're losing. Jaren has 5 fouls, is on the bench with 3 rebounds, no blocks, and he's shooting a bad percentage for the game. While Jaren is on the bench, the Rockets start building the lead up. They eventually build the lead to 115 to 107 by the time Jaren checks back in the basketball game. So on the one hand, I'm frustrated for Jaren Jackson Jr., not being able to show everyone what he can do. On the other hand, I'm also frustrated with Taylor Jenkins taking Jaren Jackson Jr. out of the game once again. I know it's traditional to take your guy out when he picks up his 5th foul with like 11 minutes left in the game. But the Rockets outscored the Grizzlies by 6 while Jaren was on the bench. So when he checks back in with 5.5 minutes left, we're down by 8. And I'm like, not again. We let the game slip away with Jaren on the bench. Let's give a little bit of blame to Taylor for taking him out. That's my opinion. A little bit of blame for Jaren for getting in foul trouble once again. But lo and behold, the final 5.5 minutes of this basketball game, the Grizzlies erased the lead. Against all odds, they came back and won the game. And they did it by not allowing the Rockets to score. Yes, Jaren was awesome down the stretch. Yes, we got a very strange, bizarre play where the referees awarded the Grizzlies the timeout that the Grizzlies did not want. More on that in a second. But over the final 6 minutes of the basketball game, the Rockets made 1 field goal attempt. They were 1 for 13 from the field in the final 6 minutes. Meanwhile, Jaren Jackson Jr. scored 9 points in that final 6 minutes. Jaren finishes the game with 21 and is the hero. He hits 2 clutch free throws to put the Grizzlies ahead. Is 3 for 3 from the field in those final minutes. But let's get to the final sequence. It's kind of funny. Where the Grizzlies get a stop. Fred VanVleet misses a 3-pointer. Jalen Wells, who was closing the game because he played amazingly well all game. Jalen Wells is out there to close the game. Jalen gets the rebound and pushes the ball. Now, I think we all noticed that the Rockets did sort of stop playing. I don't know if Jalen was on his way to an uncontested layup. Maybe he was. Also, the first thing I noticed was that the clock stopped. The clock is triggered by the referee's whistle. So when I saw the clock stop with 13 seconds left, Jalen Wells is not at half court yet. So I'm not even like frustrated by this. I assumed Taylor Jenkins called a timeout once again. But it turns out Taylor did not call a timeout. Now this is, I think especially notable when you consider how the last two losses to the Rockets occurred. Now, the timeouts that were called in those games probably didn't decide the game. But if you remember, 2 games ago, Taylor Jenkins called a timeout with the Grizzlies down 3 in the final seconds. After he calls timeout, Desmond Bane pulls up and hit a 3-pointer. Now, Desmond Bane shot the ball well after the whistle. It's not like this Taylor Jenkins timeout robbed the Grizzlies of their chance to make a 3-pointer. But it was a transition opportunity or a semi-transition opportunity. It was an opportunity perhaps where the Rockets could not set their defense. Notably, what happened after the timeout, with a 3-point lead, the Rockets just chose to foul immediately upon the inbounds pass. The Grizzlies never got a shot to tie the game because of the Rockets fouling on purpose. So after that game, we're like, hey, Taylor should not have called that timeout and let the Rockets set their defense and come up with their strategy. Then the next time the Grizzlies lose to the Rockets, the Grizzlies are down 3. I think there's like 9 seconds left, and they have to go the length of the court. They're inbounding it under their own basket. In this situation, you thought, listen, the Rockets defense is already set. We should probably call timeout and advance the ball. They don't. But they actually luck out because Amin Thompson fouls immediately in that game, if you remember, and then the Grizzlies go to the line. They're down 3. Ja Morant has 2 free throws. You still have a timeout. It's a good situation to be in, but Ja misses the free throws. So you lose that game. So you're like, well, Taylor should have called a timeout. So we had a game where it's like Taylor should not have called a timeout probably. And then we had a game where it was like, you know what? I think probably Taylor should have called a timeout. Then in this one, it's the same situation. You're down by 1, or you're not the exact same situation, but you're losing. You have the ball. Taylor has learned from the previous Rockets game, and he's like, no, I'm not going to stop this. If we have a break opportunity, let's see what we can get. Unfortunately, the referee, Merritt Kogut, awards a timeout. He said that he thought he heard a timeout being called. Taylor Jenkins is livid. You know that the referee made a mistake because the referee granted a lot of leeway for Taylor Jenkins to be super angry and yell and scream and cuss in his face. By the way, that's good refereeing. After you make the mistake, just swallow your whistle for a second. But then, so there's this stoppage. Oh, also, by the way, this is an important note. Yes, this was a referee mistake to call the timeout when no timeout was being asked for. However, this is a perfect example for why many basketball leagues, including like FIBA and Eurobasket, they don't allow coaches to call live ball timeouts because it's too chaotic. It's too hectic. The referees are watching the play. The referees are refereeing the players. Meanwhile, to grant a timeout to a coach, you either have to see the coach and also see the play. You have to make sure one team is clearly in possession of the ball, and you have to visually see that the coach is calling a timeout, or you have to know what Taylor Jenkins' voice sounds like exactly. I mean, we haven't heard this, but like there is a significant chance that someone near the scorer's table, could be a fan, was screaming timeout. I'm going to ask Brevin Knight. Maybe he was screaming timeout. It's possible someone was yelling timeout. It just wasn't Taylor Jenkins. So that's why a lot of people want the NBA to get rid of the live ball timeout called by coaches. Like players can still call a timeout. That makes sense. The referees are watching the players. They're watching the ball. That is their purview. That's what they're supposed to be doing. It's too hard for the referees to accurately award timeouts a lot of times. We see this also on like jump ball, on loose ball plays, where you jump on the ball and the coach is yelling for timeout. He's like, I called timeout. But the ref's like, well, I was looking at the ball. I have to make sure the player has the ball first. So like, of course it was a mistake, but also it's one of those mistakes where it's bound to happen. You've set up the circumstances where these mistakes aren't going to happen. Anyways, that's my defense of the referees. After this timeout is called, they run an inbound play to get Jaren Jackson Jr. a post-up one-on-one opportunity. This has been something Jaren has excelled at all year. It's a reason he's an NBA All-Star. Teams cannot stop Jaren Jackson Jr. He goes up against our old foe, Dylan Brooks. Dylan now 6-2 lifetime against the Grizzlies. He gets fouled, goes to the line, makes both clutch free throws, putting the Grizzlies up one, and then Rockets call timeout. Fred VanVleet misses a three-pointer. The Grizzlies, they don't control the defensive glass, but they do knock the ball in the air. Brandon Clark gets a hand on the ball to waste some more time by knocking it up. Then Jaren, with all of the rebounding criticisms we levy at him, Jaren was able to be the guy that got to the ball first. He bats it out. The clock runs out. Taylor Jenkins celebrates with a gigantic fist bump, and the Grizzlies win this game. So the Grizzlies hang on or overcome this fourth quarter deficit. By the way, the Grizzlies did not make a three-pointer in the final 11 minutes of the basketball game. That's old school real hoops right there. Also, of course, the Rockets didn't make a three-pointer in the final 7 minutes of the game. Again, Rockets were 1 for 13 and scored 4 points over the final 6 minutes. They were up 115-107 when Jaren Jackson Jr. checks back into the game. They end up losing to the Grizzlies 120-119. Now, Jaren, of course, was a hero down the stretch with those 9 big points at the end of the fourth quarter. Also, Desmond Bane was great, and Luke Kennard had a massive game. Let's talk about that and everybody else after this short break. All right, Desmond Bane was asked to do a lot with no Ja Morant. He came through. Desmond had 24 points and 12 rebounds. That's one off his career high. He also had 6 assists. Meanwhile, Luke Kennard was incredible. Luke Kennard got the start with Ja Morant missing the game. So sometimes when I'm watching these games, I'm not making any notes. I'm just enjoying the game. And I'm like, you know what? I'll go back the next morning before I record an episode. I'll maybe rewatch and then make some notes. I'll look at the stats. I'll just use my memories of what occurred and then look at the numbers, and then I'll record that way. Then other times I take some notes while I'm watching the game to make it easier on myself. A lot of times, like this game was a later tip. I'm thinking I have to record this earlier in the morning. I don't have that much time to get the show done. So I'm going to go ahead and make some notes throughout the game. So I did in this game, this Rockets game. I made some notes. My first half notes were Luke Kennard's incredible. Luke Kennard's playing amazing. And then I'm like, this Luke Kennard is unrecognizable. I don't really mean that as an insult. I mean the way Luke Kennard was playing, the aggressive way Luke Kennard was playing, the multitude of ways that Luke scored inside the arc. I'm like, I don't feel like I've seen this. Then I went and looked it up. So Luke finishes this game with 22 points. Luke made 3 3-pointers and 6 2-pointers. It's been 4 full years since Luke Kennard had a game where he made at least 6 2-pointers. May of 2021, when he was on the Clippers, that's the last time Luke Kennard had 6 2-pointers in a basketball game. The time before that was 2019. So I think I was right by saying this Luke Kennard is unrecognizable. It was great. Luke was so good in this basketball game. And statistically, it checks out. He did a thing he hasn't done in 4 years, which is score a lot inside the arc. I mean, combine this with the dunk Luke had earlier. Luke is having a resurgence in the past few weeks. But Luke finishes the game with 22 points, 2 assists, 2 steals. He was 3 out of 6 on 3-pointers and 6 out of 9 on 2-pointers. Meanwhile, like I said, Jalen Wells, great game. He had 11 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, a steal, and a block. And also, speaking of scoring the basketball in a multitude of ways, Jalen had some very cool moves in this one. Meanwhile, Edey, he gets the start notably against the center he replaced in Steven Adams. He only had 5 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists, had 2 turnovers, and I think rightly was taken out for most of the second half. They went with Brandon Clark. Brandon Clark played massive second half minutes. He played the final 13 minutes of the game. He played approximately, 18 or 19 minutes in the second half. Brandon, I thought, was super in this game. Finishes with 13 points and 6 rebounds, has 3 steals and 2 blocks. So whatever Brandon lacks on the defensive glass, which is significant. He's not a good rebounder. I thought he made up for it in the extra possessions he generated with those steals. And again, 6 out of 7 from the field for Brandon, playing those huge minutes. Also, I can't believe I haven't gotten to it yet. A huge notable stat for this basketball game. Like there's a lot of big stats people are going to talk about in this game. Yeah, the Grizzlies didn't make that many three-pointers. A rare win when they make fewer than 10 three-pointers. Yes, the Rockets dominated the offensive glass. Steven Adams had 7 offensive boards. The Grizzlies could not keep Tari Eason off the glass. Tari Eason had 4 offensive rebounds. The Rockets got 19 offensive rebounds and 30 second chance points. It's remarkable to win when your opponent has 30 second chance points and beats you by so many offensive rebounds. The Grizzlies only had 9 offensive rebounds. But the big notable stat for the Grizzlies and their specific season in this one is the lack of turnovers. The Grizzlies only had 11 turnovers in this game. That is how they were able to overcome those 19 offensive rebounds for the Rockets. That's how you're able to overcome only making 9 three-pointers. Again, 2 three-pointers in the first half, 0 three-pointers in the final 11 minutes of the game. Santi made a 3 early in the fourth quarter. That, of course, means you made 6 three-pointers in the third quarter. Good job, everybody. But you're able to overcome that by only having 11 turnovers. That's tied for the 5th fewest turnovers in a game that the Grizzlies have had this season. In the previous 3 Rockets games, you had 19 turnovers, 18 turnovers, and 20 turnovers. Now, Ja Morant played in the previous 3 Rockets games. Perhaps there's a conversation to be had there. However, even ignoring Ja Morant's high turnover numbers this season, in the previous Rockets games, Desmond Bane could not take care of the basketball. You had other issues controlling the basketball, and maybe it's because they were hyper-focused on it coming off that Knicks game. You had 26 turnovers against the Knicks. Coming into the Rockets game, the Grizzlies led the NBA in turnovers per game, but they got control of it in this one and only had 11 turnovers, and that, in my opinion, is a big reason for the victory. Now, the other guys who played, Santi Aldama, very big game. He made 3 three-pointers, had 15 points, 5 rebounds, had an assist. Gigi Jackson missed all 5 of his field goal attempts. Gigi was not very good. Right now, the Grizzlies, so they've won 6 of 7. Totally awesome. I mean, 7 of 8, actually, excuse me. They've been winning, and frankly, they've been winning a little bit despite Gigi Jackson. Gigi has not found his footing yet. Gigi's shooting 20% from 3 this season. Gigi, I think it's 31% from the field so far for Gigi. They also ran some weird lineups with Gigi. I liked it, frankly. In the first quarter, they did Gigi, let's say Gigi at the 2, Santi at the 2. I don't know. They ran Jaren and Brandon together in the front court with Santi, Gigi Jackson, and Desmond Bane. I'm sorry, I'm a fan of that lineup. They then replaced Desmond Bane with Scottie Pippen Jr. So still, only one traditional ball handler, only one guard in this lineup. You're running Gigi, Santi, Jaren, and Brandon 2 through 5. I'm into it. Jake LaRavia did not have the best game. He was kind of bad in the first half. I feel like Jake LaRavia is struggling. With the return of Gigi, he's lost his place in the hierarchy a little bit. He struggled in the first half. He's been struggling of late, but he did, of course, come through massively with that buzzer beater to end the third quarter, banking in that three-pointer. Scottie Pippen Jr. only played 12 minutes. That's a little bit notable because this is a game with no Ja Morant. And I think it's a little bit of a maybe lack of confidence in Scottie. Also, I choose to look at it less like a lack of confidence in Scottie and just more confidence in other people. I think they are definitely attempting to get Gigi Jackson going. They probably feel like, and I agree, to get where they want to go, they need Gigi Jackson to be good. So they need to get him up to speed. That's why he's getting minutes probably instead of Scottie Pippen. But also, Scottie got 5 assists in that 12 minutes of playing time. So that is a good job by him there. And now the Grizzlies, they get this much-needed win over a good team. Now coming up, they play a road game against the Bucks on Sunday. Then second night of a back-to-back is a Spurs home game on Monday night. Again, that's a Grizzlies watch party in Nashville. Come hang out with me and other Grizzlies fans at Noble's Beer Hall. And then trade deadline. 6 days away from the trade deadline. If you missed the last episode that I did with Chris Harrington, we talked about some trade targets. Who knows what the Grizzlies do. If Luke Kennard's going to play like this, I'm not sure you trade him for, I don't know, the Dorian Finney-Smiths of the world. Also, we got an injury update on Vince Williams Jr., a team spokesman. I guess seems like he texted the beat writers, but the team spokesman lets the beat writers know that Vince Williams Jr. is week to week in his return from the sprained ankle. They were initially hoping he would be back at the end of January. He is not, obviously. He did not make it back for January. So week to week now for Vince. The All-Star break, by the way, is 11 days away. So it seems highly possible that he comes back after the All-Star break. Maybe he comes back before then. The Grizzlies have 6 games until that All-Star break. So hopefully Vince Williams Jr. will be back soon. Marcus Smart, absolutely no clue. And with that, I think we covered everything. Congrats to the Grizzlies getting this big win over Steven Adams and Dillon Brooks. I mean, Dillon was good. I mean, the Grizzlies won despite Dillon having a big game, and in the fourth quarter especially was cooking as the Rockets built their lead up. Congratulations to Jaren Jackson Jr. being named an All-Star. Congrats to Zach Edey and Jalen Wells, rising stars. Congrats to all those Memphis Hustle players getting honored at the G League Next Up showcase. Anyways, if you want to support my show, do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. If you join up over there, you get exclusive bonus content. You can join my Slack channel where you can talk about the Grizzlies around the clock with me and other Grizzlies fans. Again, Nashville people, come out to Noble's Beer Hall on Monday, February 3rd for that Grizzlies-Spurs game. All right. Y'all have a great weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Go Grizz.